Hello, Simmers, and welcome to Washington, D.C. We are parked at Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport for a short flight with the IXEG 737-300 from KDCA to LaGuardia in New York. You can see here the Washington XP scenery with the White House, the memorial or the monument, what's it called, the Capitol, and we are parked at gate 33. Now, what you can also see is that I'm trying to point out a nice app or add-on that I'm using, which is called WebFMC. On my old iPad, which you see down here, um, I have now the display of a flight management computer, which is pretty cool. So let's just start by setting some ground surfaces, ground power, air supply, open the cargo doors. Set the weight and balance. We need 5.6 tons of fuel. And we have a zero fuel weight of 42,045. So make that 42.03. Let's switch the battery on. Arm the emergency exit lights. Select ground power. The position lights can be switched on. And we can set the IRS into the alignment mode. And as you can see right now, I can manipulate the flight management computer, and you can see that with my mouse, with my hand over the iPad, I can manipulate all the things in the FMC in the sim. So we checked the model, the AROC is current, so let's go back, continue to the POS init page. We are at Kilo Delta Charlie Alpha, and let's set our GPS left as the primary source. So we're flying KDCA to LaGuardia. Our flight number today is US Airways 2121. We expect to depart runway 01, and our route will take us to Suki 4 via Swan to Gatby 1. So basically I can just press departure arrival, select runway 01, Suki 4, transitioning via Swan into the route page, and then it's a Gatby 1 arrival via Swan into runway 04 in LaGuardia. So ILS runway 04 and Gatby 1 via Swan into the route page, go to the legs page, find route discontinuities. There's one. And activate and execute. That's the lateral flight plan already programmed. So if you have an old iPad, this is truly a magnificent add-on. It really brings a lot of immersion into your sim. So let's continue to the init page. Go back to the index, go to performance. Our flight level today will be flight level 290. And our zero fuel weights, what did we say? What did we end up with? 42.03. Let's say we have 2 tons in reserves for our alternates. We'll use a cost index of 50. And let's see what the cruise wind is. Let's go to Active Sky XP for that one. debriefing. It's 255 at 32. Oh. And our ISA deviation at top of climb. Is it still in there somewhere? Yeah, there it is, +9. Transition altitude 18,000 feet, which is standard in the US, so execute. Continue to the N1. We'll select the derated takeoff. Proceed. And select our V speeds for flaps 5 takeoff. V2 will be 136. And we have a trim setting of 4.2. And like I said, 136 for the V2. Trim setting 4.2. That's set. So let's check our center of gravity, whether that's correct. It's 20%. It says 22 in here. So let's alter that so that makes it a trim setting of 4.4. So that is now set. So as you can see, without having to buy for hundreds of bucks of worth of hardware, just if you have an old iPad or your iPhone, it also works on the iPhone, just connect to the SIM. If you go into the SIM, into the network page, in here you will find the IP address. Just press HTTP and then // 172.16.0.8, and then the double point, and then 9090. That's the port number, and then it will connect to your SIM. It works with a number of add-on aircraft. Not every add-on is featured, but most of the big ones are. You can do this with the TOLIS, with the Flight Factor A320, the Zibo mod. IXEG is working. The SSG 747 is also working. So there's lots of it, and they update it quite regularly. So I'm now waiting the update that will also have it work with the Inibuilds A300. But this is a really, really nifty plugin, and it works like a charm. Let's see. There's nothing in here in the menu box, but WebFMC, really, it's awesome. If you don't want to spend hundreds of dollars on a control display unit, but you do want to have more immersion programming flights, if you have an iPad, a tablet whatsoever, or a smartphone, you can just use it to make it your own virtual control display unit. This is a really nice piece of equipment for any simmer. If you like to fly airliners from A to B, it's just amazing. I love it. I used it for quite a time. I never made a video on it, but this is really some very, very nice stuff. If you are serious about simming, if you're serious about flying airliners in the sim, I think this little add-on is mandatory. It's incredible. And let's just continue with the setup of the flight deck. So the IRS is still aligning. Let's see how long it will take it. Another 3 minutes. So that's time for us to run some checks. So after overhead, that seems nice. Overhead. These lights are all working. This is all working. These lights are working. So are those. This is working. Mode control panel is all the lights working.
Light slow. Pull up. Wind shear. Wind shear. Wind shear. Terrain, terrain. Pull up. Runway. Awareness. Okay.
Meter.
Alright, so that's working. This is all fine. Let's see. So let's say we have an initial climb clearance for, let's take a look at the departure chart here. So initial climb 060, blah blah blah. Top altitude is 5,000 feet. That's our initial climb clearance. So there we are. Put the legs page on the first officer's FMC. And here we are. Let's set the NDs to the map mode. Let's make sure that the range is set correctly. Power on fuel pump number 1. Let's start up the APU. Now we're gonna fly level 290, so dial that one in here. And for 290 we require pressure altitude or cabin altitude for 5,000. And in LaGuardia we have a landing altitude of 21 feet. So standby, auto, so this is all set correctly. Let's put the window heats on. Switch on the yaw damper. APU is now running, it's on the buses, APU bleed is on, isolation valve is open. So we can proceed with disconnecting the ground surfaces. Close the cargo doors. And let's listen to an ADIS.
Kilo Delta Charlie Alpha Airport Information Golf 2052 Zulu Weather Wind 351 at 13 Visibility 10 Sky Condition Few clouds at 4,800 6,500 Scattered Temperature 23 Dew point 12 Altimeter 2998 Advice on initial contact. You have information Golf.
So 2998 for the altimeter. It's set.
Kilo.
There we are. Right. So we have the APU started. Everything is on the buses. Let's pre-plan our pushback and get us out of here.
Ground to cockpit, plan acknowledged. Call me through the menu when you are ready.
Alright, so let's call them.
Ground to cockpit, tow is driving up.
Anti-collision lights can be switched on. There's no other ground equipment. So let's just, while we wait for the tug, enjoy some of the views here. Like I said, Washington XP, that's the scenery. I think that's also the Ronald Reagan airport scenery. Of course, what we're going to do is we'll take off from runway 01, then we'll fly a departure that will basically have us follow the river. to stay clear of the restricted airspace. As you can imagine, the Secret Service becomes quite scared with the president living here and airplanes flying in and out of an airport since 9/11.
Okay, all doors and hatches are closed, ready to connect.
Of course, there's a healthy reluctance to having airplanes flying so close to so many high-profile targets, such as the Capitol building, the mall, the Washington Monument, the White House, etc. So, and then of course there's the Pentagon. So there's some high-profile targets there. So the airspace is quite narrow, and we have to follow the procedure carefully, fly across the river towards the northwest, and then make a right-hand turn towards the northeast to Swan, and then
So connected and bypass pin inserted. Release parking brake.
continue south of Wilmington, southeast and east of Philadelphia towards New York City, where we'll fly pretty much a straight-in approach to runway 04 for LaGuardia Airport. Anyway, the tug is connected. So let's release the parking brake and proceed with the startup. So let's set the transponder to TA. Brakes released, clear to push.
Starting pushback, and you may start engines.
Roger, starting sequence first 2, then 1. Starting number 2. Now, I still love the IXEG 737-300, and they have upgraded it. They made it compatible to 11.5. They threw in some extra updates. It's just an amazing add-on. I really like it. Of course, the Zibo mod has the benefit that it's freeware, but in terms of payware add-ons, this is well, I think this still is number 1. Maybe in a shared position with the Flight Factor A320, but this is definitely a very nice add-on. And especially with the WebFMC that I showed you, it's just such an immersive airplane. Anyway, number 2 is stabilized, starter cutout, start number 1. So the fuel flow is open.
Operation complete. Set parking brake.
Of course, our initial heading is not 164. It's basically 334 across the river. So climb on heading 006 to intercept course 334. So we'll dial 006 in here as our initial heading. Okay, we have 2 good engine starts up here. The parking brakes are set, clear to disconnect.
Disconnecting tow. Stand by.
So let's set the starters to continuous, set the generators on the buses. PAX auto, isolation valve auto, APU bleed off. APU master can be switched off. Galley power can be switched on. So can the pitot-static heats. Yaw damper was checked on. Fuel configuration is okay. So happy days. Let's set flaps 5 and perform our flight control check. Up, neutral, and of course
Tow is
rudder.
disconnected and bypass
Full
pin
left.
has been removed.
full
Hand
right.
signal will be on the right.
Neutral.
We'll see you next time, and have a great flight.
Thanks for your help. See you next time. Bye bye. So what we will do is switch on the flight directors. Clear signal is received. So runway turn off, taxi lights on. Parking brake released and taxi to runway 01. Brake test. Brakes are working. Now what IXEG did an excellent job on is the particle system. They really tweaked the jet blast. Even if you have like a wet tarmac, you get such a realistic blast of water behind the airplane. They really outperformed themselves on that one. And I think they are leading for any airplane add-on in X-Plane11 in that respect right now. They really set the bar high. So anyway, what we need to do is intercept the 334 radial to ADEX. I'm just can't figure out. It's not a course from a radio beacon, but 334. Oh, at least that's the course that we need to follow. So let's dial that one in here anyway. Just as a reminder then. So let's turn left in the next intersection. Slow down to roughly 10 knots ground speed. It's indicated in here. Turning left, follow this yellow line. Onto this taxiway, let's switch the strobe lights on. Because we're going to cross a runway.
Approaching 04.
Check 04. Runway is clear. Clear to cross. Strobe lights are on. Let's set the transponder to TARA. So we'll just leave the strobe lights on. We're gonna line up anyway. So let's just take the second yellow line here. Auto throttle is armed. Flight ground switch to flight mode. So the cabin will be start to
Approaching.
pressurize as soon as we
0,
start
1.
to climb. 01 is verified and correct. Line up. So American 2121 is ready for takeoff.
On runway 01.
Alright. Landing lights on. Let's say that we are cleared for takeoff. So US Airways 2121 cleared for takeoff. Chronometer engaged. Airspeed active. Radio notes cross-checked. Thrust set. V1 rotates. Positive rates. Gear up. Elma VNAV. Gear is up and off. Here we go. Autopilot engaged. Auto brakes off. Flaps 2. And flaps 1. Flaps up. So here we are following the river, flying out of Washington, D.C. Let's say that we are clear to climb fly level 180. Make that 190. Dial up the heading modes. Starters off. taxi, runway turn off light, and the exterior or the extended landing lights can be switched off already. Seatbelt signs, oh, didn't switch them on, let's set them to auto. Given the current temperature of 6.7 and the fact that we have clouds, let's switch on the engine and wing NTIs. Some 10,000 feet, landing lights off. Clouds, by the way, by Active Sky XP, just as usual. And as usual, it's doing an awesome job in rendering them. All the different layers. So we're clear to climb flight level 290. And we are well clear of the clouds, so the NTIs can be switched off. Pressurization is normal. So here we are on our departure, heading straight for Swan. Flying south of Baltimore right now. So that should be Baltimore down there. And then from Swan it's a left-hand turn. And from there it's basically a straight line towards New York City. As mentioned, runway 04 into LaGuardia. It should give us some views over Manhattan. Very curious how that will end up. So basically I will just continue the flight and I'm back with you guys in a few minutes to set up the approach into LaGuardia. So see you in a bit. So it's a couple of minutes later, we are approaching our top of climb and our top of descent is shortly thereafter, so we already have to take a look at the approach into LaGuardia and set that up. So first thing that we'll do, let's go back to the init page, approach ref page, and we'll select our landing speed and flaps. So it's going to be flaps 30, speed 135 knot approach. And what we also need is to take a quick look at the final approach chart for the ILS. So the frequency 110.5, course 044. Of course we have to set that. And LaGuardia has the 113.1 VOR. But the ILS was 1105. So we are 67 miles out of LaGuardia. So ILS frequency and course are set. We want to use auto brakes 2. And we have to set our minimums, which will be 284 radio. So dial this up to 284. And also on the first officer side. There we are. Of course, with the 737-300, the flight management computer is a little bit different from that in the more modern Boeings. So there's not much else we have to do here. What we do need to do is check the legs for the approach. So let's do that. If we take a look at the star chart. After Swan it's Gatby. Well, we already passed that one, so it's going to be DuPont, Delta Quebec Oscar. Coming up to that one now. Then it's on to Whiskey India Lima Juliet Romeo, that's in there. Ruth, that's in there. Davis is inserted. Holy is put correctly. Then it's Corey. We have to expect 8,000 at Corey. And that's not in there, so let's put that one in here as an altitude constraint. Robbinsville, Romeo Bravo Victor, that's in there. On to Tykes, Minx, Renew, Apple, and then it's Proud. And from there on we will proceed on the final approach charts towards green, Delta November, November India Sierra, and then on to runway 04. So we have the lateral flight plan inserted correctly. Let's start our descent. And let's make that initial descent to 8,000 feet. Dial up the heading once more. We can arm the speed brake. Seatbelt signs back to on. And here we go, descending into New York for an approach into LaGuardia. Only 17 minutes into flight. These are the really nice short flights that I so dearly love. Flying south of Philadelphia right now. Unfortunately we cannot see it due to the clouds. But yeah, in terms of the flight management system, this is basically it. We set the approach speeds. The legs have been checked. The arrival was inserted correctly. We don't need any fixes. So if we go back to the progress page, we can see that we are expect to arrive in 87 miles into LaGuardia. So WebFMC, I think a need to have for anyone who is serious about flight simming with airliners flying from A to B. If you want to get it really immersive without using VR, WebFMC is definitely a very, very nice add-on for X-Plane11. It does say that we need drag, so let's extend the speed brake and clear the message. Come on to route, and then it's a left-hand turn, which is basically a straight line into LaGuardia. What we also have to do is obtain an ADIS for LaGuardia, so let's do just that.
Kilo Lima Golf Alpha Airport information Juliet 2051 Zulu weather wind 013 at 13 visibility 10 sky condition few clouds at 3000 few clouds at 6000 temperature 2.6 altimeter 29996 advise on initial contact that you have information Juliet.
Information Juliet on board. And in LaGuardia we have a wind 013. So that's almost, well, that's a slight crosswind from the left, but nothing too serious. Not near the operating limits of this airplane. And with 18,000 feet coming up, that is the transition altitude. So let's dial up the QNH to 29906 on both the captain and first officer sides. Well, we passed the vicinity of Trenton. Just admiring the 3D modeling on this beautiful add-on. The IXEG 737-300 is a splendid add-on that I think is really worth every cent that it costs. The developers did some awesome updates in the recent couple of weeks, bringing it up to standards for X-Plane 11.5, and they've done a great job doing that. So we need to be at 2,700, 1,700 at DNNIS for, or Dennis, for the interception of the glide slope. So let's just proceed our descent to 2,000 feet. And let's increase some drag because the speed is dead high. A 1105 is already identified. And we have low temperatures, we have visible moisture, so let's switch the engine and wing anti-ice on again. We really need to start slowing down. 10,000 feet is coming up, so the inboard landing lights can be switched on. Seatbelt signs are on. Cabin crew, prepare for landing. Passing 10,000 feet, check that the landing lights are on. Let's switch the starters to continuous. So we're coming up on New York City already. Should have a view on that as soon as we pass these clouds. QNH is set. Minimums 284 are set and cross-checked. Auto brakes set 2. Speed brakes armed. So let's monitor our approach. 044 is set, ILS 1105, that's also dialed in. So temperature is now increasing rapidly towards 10 degrees Celsius. There it is. So let's switch the engine and wing anti-ice off. ILS is identified. We have a localizer and a glide slope indication. So just set this one back to this. There we are. It's now on the right side of the display, so let's switch the approach mode to arms. So we are 20 miles out. And a little bit of drag establishing on the ILS. There's the Manhattan area. This is the standard X-Plane scenery. No add-on stuff. You used to have the Dr. Shesky designs scenery. But it was a bit too heavy, so I uninstalled it. I will install it again, see how it performs under X-Plane11.5. Might be improved by now. Will be interesting to take a look at that. Anyway, we need to start slowing down, so let's reduce the speed to 220. Let's reduce our rate of descent to 500 feet per minute. That should help slow down the airplane. So let's reduce speed further to 10. Speed brakes armed. And set flaps 1. However, I believe the New York airports are still the Dr. Shesky design scenery. There's the runway. So let's start to reduce speed to 180. And set flaps to 5. Look at this approach. Look at all the buildings in Manhattan, the Freedom Tower, Statue of Liberty. So glide slope is alive, we are localizer established. Reduce the speed further to 160. Glide slope captured and glide slope is green. Set flaps 10. Set the outboard landing lights on, runway turn off taxi lights on. And let's lower the landing gear. Select flaps 15. And reduce the speed to our approach speed to 135. Select flaps 25. And flaps 30. Alright, let's take a look at the missed approach, heading and altitudes. 2,000 feet. So missed approach altitude is already set. 1,000 feet stabilized, missed approach altitude set. Gear down locked, 3 green, flaps 30 green. Spoilers armed, auto brakes 2, exterior lights on, starters continuous. Cabin crew, seats for landing. Cabin is ready, so let's
Approaching 04.
Disconnect the automation and go for a manual approach into LaGuardia. Check 400 feet. Slightly low. Correcting.
Minimum.
Continue landing.
Traffic. 10.
Long landing, 5,000
Reverses.
feet remaining. 4,000 remaining.
And reverses idle, manual braking. APU starts. Phytostatic heats off. Flaps retracted. Spoilers retracted. Auto brakes off. Landing lights off. Starters off. Strobe lights off. Transponder TA only. Right hand turn. Flight directors off. We will cross a runway, so strobe lights on. Runway is clear.
Approaching 13.
Yeah, let's set the transponder to TARA. We are clear to cross. And runways crossed, strobe lights off, transponder back to TA only. Turning left here. This is the Dr. Sieski design LaGuardia Airport. So let's make it for the inner taxiway. Chronometer had to switch off, of course. Should have done it earlier. But, well, it's just a quick taxi to the gate. So let's set the APU generator to the buses. APU bleed on. Isolation valve open. And set the engine bleeds off. I think we're going to take a right-hand turn here and park at that gate down there. Which is Bravo 4. So let's switch the runway turn off and taxi lights off. So let's set the parking brakes on and take a look at the landing from the outside. Flared a little bit too soon, but quite pleased with this landing. So anyway, fuel flow off, and that concludes the flight from Washington DCA, Ronald Reagan National Airport, to New York's LaGuardia, with the aid of WebFMC for some hardware support on the control display unit for the sim. A add-on or plugin that I recommend wholeheartedly. Like I said, if you are serious about your A to B simming with an airliner and you have either a smartphone or a tablet, then WebFMC is definitely a really nice addition to your simulation setup. It really enhances the immersion into the sim. And well, if you're on a budget like me and you cannot afford the hundreds and hundreds of dollars on, maybe even thousands of dollars on hardware creating your own flight deck, then WebFMC is cheap but very nice and immersive alternative to some of the investment that could be made. So anyway, I hope you liked the video. As usual, if you have tips, tricks, comments whatsoever, please leave them in the comment section below. I'm not a professional pilot, so there's a lot for me to learn. So if you saw me make mistakes, please point them out to me in the comment section, and please tell me what I did wrong, why it is wrong, and how to do it right the next time. Hope to see you all again another day on another video. Thank you for watching, and bye bye.